I never imagined I'd be writing this, but here we are. This is the story of how my own brother betrayed me in the worst way possible, how he took my kindness for granted, humiliated me, and thought he could get away with it. But he was wrong, very, very wrong. Let me start from the beginning. My brother, Jake, and I had always had a complicated relationship. We were close as kids, but as we grew older, things changed. He became the golden child in our family, the one who could do no wrong. My mom, Karen, and my dad, Mark, showered him with praise, excused his mistakes, and acted like he walked on water. Meanwhile, I was always the one who had to be responsible, who had to sacrifice, who had to understand whenever Jake did something selfish. But despite everything, I still loved him. I still wanted to be a good sibling, and that's why when he announced he was getting married, I offered to help in a big way. Jake and his fiancée, Emily, had their dream wedding all planned out, but there was one problem: they couldn't afford it. The venue, the catering, the decorations, the dress, the flowers, it was all way out of their budget. I saw how stressed they were, and despite our rocky history, I wanted to do something nice. So I made them an offer. I told Jake I would cover the wedding expenses as my gift to them. Not a loan, not a split payment. I would pay for everything. It was a huge amount of money, but I figured, hey, it's my brother, it's a once-in-a-lifetime event. If I could make him happy, why not? Jake was over the moon, Emily cried tears of joy, and my mom, Karen, and my dad, Mark, gushed about how generous I was. It felt good, it felt like for once I was truly appreciated. But then everything changed. The wedding planning went on, and I started noticing something odd. Whenever I asked about my role in the wedding, I was given vague answers. At first, I thought maybe they were just busy, but as time went on, I felt a heavy knot in my stomach, as if a storm was quietly brewing, unstoppable from deep within. Then, about a month before the wedding, I received a text from Rachel. Not even a call, just a cold, emotionless message. Hey, just wanted to let you know that we've decided to keep the wedding small and intimate. We hope you understand. Thanks again for everything. I read the message 3 times, thinking I must have misunderstood. I wasn't invited to a wedding I was paying for? For being upset when I wasn't even invited to the wedding I funded? I immediately called Jake, but he didn't answer. So I texted him asking what was going on. Hours passed before he finally responded. Look, we just don't think you fit the vibe of the wedding. It's nothing personal, hope you're not mad. Not mad. I was fuming. My own brother had the audacity to take my money, plan his dream wedding, and then tell me I wasn't good enough to be there? I needed answers. I called my mom, expecting her to be outraged, but when she picked up, her response made my stomach drop. Oh honey, just let it go. It's their special day. You don't want to make things awkward, do you? I couldn't believe it. They knew. They knew and didn't care. That's when I realized I was on my own. And that's when I decided, if they wanted a wedding without me, well, they weren't going to have a wedding at all. I sat there staring at my phone, my mind racing. I had spent months watching Jake and Rachel plan this wedding, offering advice when asked, covering deposits, making sure everything was perfect for them. I went above and beyond to ensure they had the most magical day possible. And now, after all that, I wasn't even invited? Not only that, but the way they dismissed me as if I didn't even matter, like I was just an afterthought. It felt like a story straight out of our /entitled parents, where no matter how much you give, you're always just the invisible one. Bye for canceling everything I paid for after my brother and sister cut me out of the wedding? I wasn't going to let this go, not without making sure they faced the consequences of their actions. I had given them everything, but when it came time to show me the respect I deserved, they didn't even think I mattered. So if they wanted a wedding without me, they weren't going to have one at all. The thought that I was being treated as some distant acquaintance instead of family made my blood boil, as if a hot, seething anger was rising from deep within me. I could have understood if there were budget restrictions or a venue capacity issue, but the harsh reality was I was literally the one funding everything. There was no excuse, no justification. I needed time to process what had just happened, to let the weight of it sink in. I placed my phone down, letting the silence envelop me, feeling the room close in around me. At first I was hurt, crushed, even like a fragile vase shattered on the floor. But as the minutes ticked by, that sadness slowly hardened into something else. Something sharper, like the edge of a blade. They thought they could use me. They thought they could walk all over me, take my generosity for granted, and get away with it. They were wrong. That moment I felt the shift inside me. I knew with a clarity that was almost terrifying that I wasn't going to let this slide. But I wasn't about to give them the satisfaction of seeing me throw a tantrum or beg them to reconsider. No, that's exactly what they expected me to do. Instead, I would play it smart. Calculated. I started gathering the pieces of this puzzle one by one. Since I had paid for everything, I still had access to all the contracts. The venue, the catering, the florist, the photographer. I had been the primary point of contact for most of these services, and since the payments had come from my account, that meant one very important thing. Everything was still in my name. A slow, calculated plan began to form in my mind. The wedding was still a few weeks away, which meant I had time to make sure that when the big day arrived, things wouldn't go exactly as Jake and Emily had planned. But first I needed to do some digging. I started scrolling through social media looking at their posts about the wedding. Sure enough, their small and intimate guest list wasn't so small after all. Dozens of people were commenting about how excited they were to attend. Friends, extended family members, even coworkers. It was starting to become clear. The truth was nothing like the picture they'd painted. It felt like a story straight out of our entitled parents, where no matter how much you give, you're always just the invisible one. I didn't fit the vibe, but all these people did. That was all the confirmation I needed. It felt like a slap to the face, the truth slithering into my mind like a cold, hard reality. I took a deep breath, steadying myself, and pulled up my emails. The weight of what I was about to do settled over me, a storm gathering on the horizon. With a steady hand, I began making a few phone calls. First on the list, the venue. I picked up the phone and dialed the venue's number, the sharp click of the dial tone echoing in my ear like the countdown to a ticking bomb. A polite woman answered. "Hello, this is Willow Crest Events. How can I assist you?" I kept my tone calm and professional, like a practiced actor playing a role I had rehearsed 1,000 times. "Hi, I'm calling regarding the upcoming wedding for Jake and Rachel on the 17th. I'm actually the one who made the booking and I need to discuss some changes." "Of course," she said. "What changes would you like to make?" I paused for a moment, letting the anticipation linger, the weight of my decision settling in my chest like a stone. The storm inside me was raging, but I stayed composed. It was time. "Actually, I'd like to cancel the booking entirely." There was a brief silence, the kind that stretched on like a still lake before the storm. "Oh, I see. Just to confirm, you are the one who made the payment and signed the contract, correct?" I felt the words slip from my mouth, cold as ice. "That's right. The contract is in my name, and since I won't be attending the wedding, I've decided to withdraw my support." The silence on the other end of the line thickened, heavy with the weight of what was happening. It was almost as if the woman on the other end could feel the tension in my voice. The deposit was non-refundable, but that was the least of my concerns. I was done. They thought they could use me, take my kindness for granted. And now they would see what happens when you push someone too far. I ended the call without a second thought, but the adrenaline hadn't quite left me yet. I sat there for a moment, feeling the weight of what I'd just done, shutting down everything that had been planned, everything they had taken for granted. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was reclaiming control. It was time to make them realize that this wedding, their dream wedding, was no longer happening. If they wanted to leave me out of it, fine. But I wasn't going to let them walk away without facing the consequences. This was the moment it all changed. "That's right," I said, each word calculated, every syllable sharp as glass. "The contract is under my name, and since I won't be attending the wedding, I've decided to withdraw my support. I understand there's a cancellation fee, but that's fine." She hesitated, as if weighing the cost of what was to come. "Well, since you're the contract holder, you do have the right to cancel. However, the deposit is non-refundable." "That's completely fine," I reassured her, my voice cold and steady. "Just go ahead and process the cancellation. Also, please make sure that any communication regarding this comes directly to me. I don't want anyone else making changes on my behalf." She agreed, and after a few minutes of confirmation, the venue was officially cancelled. Point one down. I hung up the phone, already feeling a wave of satisfaction wash over me, like a flood of fresh air after being trapped in a room for too long. But I wasn't done yet. Next up, the catering. Jake and Rachel had planned an extravagant menu, multiple courses, an open bar, a beautiful cake. It was their vision of perfection, but it wasn't going to happen on my dime. I dialed the catering company's number with a sense of calm, knowing the next step of my plan was in motion. The woman on the other end answered, and I repeated the same procedure, every word deliberate, precise. "Hi, I'm calling about catering for Jake and Rachel's wedding." They had raved about it for months, but once again I was the one who had paid for it. I called the catering company and repeated the same process. "Hello, I'm calling regarding an upcoming event I booked for them. Unfortunately, there's been a change of plans and I need to cancel the catering services." The woman on the other end asked if I was sure. "We're just a couple of weeks out, so there will be a cancellation fee." "I understand," I cut in smoothly. "Go ahead and cancel everything." After a few minutes, it was done. The caterers were no longer preparing anything for the wedding. Point two down. I smirked, but I wasn't finished. The florist, the photographer, the decorations. One by one I went down the list, canceling everything. Each call felt like reclaiming a piece of my dignity, like I was undoing every ounce of manipulation Jake and Rachel had tried to pull on me. By the time I was finished, the entire wedding had been reduced to nothing but an empty venue, one that they no longer even had access to. Now all that was left was to sit back and wait. Jake and Rachel had no idea what was coming. The days leading up to the wedding were eerily quiet. Jake and Rachel hadn't reached out to me at all, which told me one thing. They were completely unaware that their entire wedding had just been erased. I had to admit, there was a small part of me that wondered when they would figure it out. The venue, the catering, the decorations, surely someone had contacted them by now, right? But no, I wasn't going to warn them. I wasn't going to give them a single hint. Instead I waited. Then the night before the wedding my phone rang. It was my mother, Karen. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me and I answered with a casual, "Hey Mom." The first thing I heard was chaos, shouting, panicked voices. My mother's sharp, breathless tone pierced through. "What did you do?" My phone sat there waiting, patient as a predator ready to strike. Then like clockwork the messages started pouring in. Jake texted, "What did you do? You ruined everything. Now you're happy." Rachel texted, "You are beyond selfish. You knew how important this day was for me. I'm your brother." I took my time before responding, sipping my Starbucks coffee like it was a ritual, my eyes tracing the steam curling upwards. I typed back a single message. "I wasn't invited, remember? Didn't seem like you wanted my involvement, so I just followed your lead. I'm the one pay for your catering and everything. Am I a walking ATM of you?" Silence lingered, thick and heavy, almost suffocating. Then like a storm breaking my phone rang. "Jake." I let it ring out. It rang again and again, each vibration a beat of anticipation. Finally, after the 12 times I picked up. "Let me guess," I said dry. "Something wrong with the wedding?" His voice was shaking with rage. "Do you have any idea what you've done? People are arriving in a few hours. There's nothing here. No food. No chairs. No flowers." "Oh wow, that sounds interesting, huh?" I said, feigning concern. "Maybe you should ask the person who actually planned the wedding." "Oh wait, that was me." He let out a sharp breath, his anger palpable in the phone line. "You intend to humiliate me. You did this on purpose. You wanted to tear me down, to make me feel small. You knew exactly what you were doing, and now you're trying to ruin everything I've worked for. You know we need your funding right now." "Of course I did," I replied. "You expected me to pay for everything and then just accept being tossed aside like I was nothing? You used me, Jake, and you thought I'd just take it." I could hear Rachel's voice in the background, panicked, speaking to someone else. "Can we get another caterer? Anything?" The second voice answered, "Not at this notice, everything's booked solid." I could practically hear the blood draining from her face. Jake's voice dropped to a desperate whisper. "Please, we can fix this. If we just get the venue back." I cut him off, my tone sharp. "The venue is my contract, remember? And they're fully booked for months. So yeah, that's not happening." He let out a strained breath, and for the first time, there was something in his voice that hadn't been there before. Panic. I let that silence linger, savoring the moment. Then just as I was about to hang up, I gave him one final parting shot. "Next time, don't take advantage of people who actually care about you." And with that I hung up. But the story wasn't over yet. I sat back, my fingers still lingering on the phone screen, a feeling of satisfaction spreading through me like warm liquid gold. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I had control of the situation. Later on, Reddit update about Jake and Emily's little world was about to collapse and I was going to watch it all unfold from the sidelines. Knowing I'd played my part, but the real chaos started to hit as the morning wore on. I started receiving messages from friends and family members who had been invited to the wedding. "Aunt Karen, 8:05 a.m. What the hell is going on? I just got to the venue and it's like a ghost town." "Uncle Ray, 82 a.m. Hey, we got here early for the wedding, but there's no one here. Did they cancel? What's going on?" The more I read, the more the gravity of the situation hit me. It wasn't just Jake and Emily who were affected. This was spiraling out of their control and people were starting to talk. That's when I had to admit. Part of me felt a little gleeful, but that feeling quickly shifted as I realized the scale of the disaster. All of their friends, their family, none of them had any idea this was coming. I began to feel the slightest pang of guilt. These weren't just strangers. These were people I knew. People who had come from out of town, people who had taken time off work to celebrate the wedding. Sure, Jake and Emily had treated me like a doormat, but was this really fair to the rest of the guests? Then again, I couldn't help but remember how they had treated me. How Emily had laughed when I suggested I be part of the planning process. How Jake had made comments about me not fitting the vibe of the wedding. They deserved to feel this. I checked my phone again and the messages kept coming in. My mom texted, "They're trying to fix it. They said the caterers are on their way now, but the venue is still empty. What's going on?" My dad texted, "Everyone is starting to leave. No one knows what's going on." I couldn't help it, I had to respond. I replied, I heard the wedding was going great. Such a shame. But hey, I'm sure they'll find some food or a chair somewhere. It was petty, I knew, but it was so satisfying to watch the mess ripple through the family. And then for the first time I paused. Something inside me shifted. The satisfaction I had felt earlier started to fade, replaced by something else. A flicker of guilt, but also something deeper, something unexpected. I wasn't just angry at Jake and Emily anymore. I wasn't just trying to get back at them. The truth was, this whole situation was bigger than my frustration with them. This was about more than what they had done to me. It was about reclaiming a sense of control that I hadn't felt in years. It was about realizing how much I had allowed them to dictate the narrative of my life, and how for the first time I was taking it back. I wasn't just punishing them. I was teaching myself a lesson in standing up for what I deserved, even if it meant watching everything they'd built fall apart. And as the messages kept pouring in, I finally understood. This wasn't just about getting back at Jake and Rachel. It was about me. It was about my freedom. This was about something bigger, something that had been building for years. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much of my life I had spent putting up with their selfishness. The more I reflected on everything I had done for them, only for them to completely disregard me at the first opportunity. Now they were reaping what they had sown. But the icing on the cake was still to come. The day dragged on. I kept checking my phone, watching the disaster unfold from the comfort of my apartment. The messages kept flooding in from family. At first they were all filled with confusion, but soon the tone shifted. My mom texted. I was hearing whispers, rumors floating through the air like smoke, until one text confirmed it. The wedding is officially cancelled. No catering, no setup. Everything's just gone. Uncle Ray had sent it. I think they've called off the whole thing. Everyone's heading home. This is crazy. Is this real? I couldn't help but smile as the weight of the situation sank in. The perfect day, the one they had been dreaming about, had transformed into a full-blown catastrophe. The idea of Jake and Rachel scrambling to explain this to their guests, how it was supposed to be the happiest day of their lives, and now it was nothing but chaos, was sweet. The irony was delicious. But as the day wore on, something unexpected happened. Jake and Rachel started calling more, their voices growing more frantic with each ring. First I ignored them. Then a desperate text from Rachel appeared on my screen. Please, just tell me you didn't cancel everything. I'll beg you. I'll do anything. Her tone wasn't the smug, self-righteous Rachel I knew. It was raw and pleading, the sound of someone who had fallen from grace and was clinging to anything left. But why should I help her? Why should I be the one to clean up the mess they had created? I didn't respond immediately. I let her stew in her panic, savoring the feeling of watching her desperation. An hour later, Jake texted. We're getting married at City Hall today. We need you to help with the venue and food. I'm sorry for everything I said. Please, you're the only one who can fix this now. The irony hit me like a wave. They had literally fired me from the wedding weeks ago, and now they were begging me to save them. I could feel the tension building in my chest. Was I really going to just let them scramble around, realizing the full weight of their mistake? Or was it finally time for me to take the upper hand? I couldn't resist. I replied, it's a bit too late for that, don't you think? Maybe you should have treated me like family instead of some second-rate guest you could toss aside. Silence. The kind of silence that speaks louder than words. And just as I was about to close my phone, it rang. Jake's voice came through this time, softer, almost defeated. Look, we're sorry. We're really sorry, but the venue won't let us rebook. It's done, and there's no one else to turn to for the catering. Please help us. I could hear the panic in Jake's voice, but there was something else too, something I hadn't anticipated. They were desperate, but so was I. As I listened to his shaky words, a strange sensation gripped me. Power. Here he was, pleading with me for help after everything they had put me through. After all the dismissive comments, the exclusion, the way they treated me like I was invisible. Part of me wanted to hang up, walk away, and leave them to face the consequences of their actions. They deserved it, didn't they? They had been selfish, manipulative, and ungrateful, and now they were finally feeling the sting of their own choices. But there was something else, something darker that I couldn't ignore. I had always been the one to clean up their messes, always the one who gave without ever receiving anything in return. For years I had been the quiet one, the one who didn't rock the boat, the one who kept my feelings buried. But this time it was different. This time I wasn't going to fix their mess unless I got something back. I'll help, I said slowly, my voice like ice, deliberate and cold. But you're going to owe me big time. And I'm not talking about the money you promised. There was a long pause. What? What do you mean? His voice was low, almost too afraid to ask. I mean, I continued, letting the weight of my words sink in, you're going to make things right. No more treating me like a nobody. No more excluding me. No more pretending I'm not important to this family. You're going to owe me respect from now on, and you'll make it clear to everyone that I'm not just the person you turn to when things go wrong." Silence hung in the air. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, as if he were weighing the value of his pride against the reality of the situation he was trapped in. Finally he spoke. I can do that. I'll tell everyone. Just please help us. We need you." That was all I needed. The satisfaction of knowing they were cornered, that they had no choice but to admit they needed me. "I'll get things together," I said, a sense of finality in my voice. "But remember this moment. You don't get to treat people like trash and expect them to always pick up the pieces." And with that I hung up. A rush of satisfaction surged through me. The venue was ready to be set up again. But now there were terms, and the real payoff was going to come when I got to see the look on their faces when they realized what had truly happened. But as I prepared to head over, one final message came through. Emily texted, "Please, we'd be forever grateful, please make this right." I paused before responding, taking a moment to savor the power I now had over them. I replied, "You'll be grateful when I say you will be. See you at City Hall." With that, I left my apartment ready to make my way to the wedding. The stage was set, and now it was time for the final act. But there was still one thing I hadn't expected: how this would all end. When I arrived at City Hall, the atmosphere was far from what you'd expect for a wedding. There was a sense of awkwardness hanging in the air, as if everyone knew something wasn't right but couldn't quite put their finger on it. The small crowd gathered in the lobby looked uncomfortable, standing in clusters, whispering among themselves. Jake and Emily were standing by the front desk, looking more like two people who had just been through a war than a couple about to get married. They saw me as soon as I entered, their faces lighting up in a mixture of relief and nervousness. "Thank you for coming," Emily said, her voice shaky. "We really appreciate it." She looked at me almost pleadingly, like I was some sort of savior. Jake, ever the prideful one, didn't say much. He just nodded, his eyes avoiding mine as if he couldn't quite bring himself to admit how badly they had messed up. I walked toward them slowly, taking in the tension that filled the room. There were no flowers, no grand decorations, just a sterile room with a few chairs and a judge standing at the front. It felt more like a courtroom than a wedding venue. I approached the small group of guests who had been invited. They all offered me tentative smiles, but no one was exactly thrilled to be there. Everyone had expected a wedding fit for a celebration, but instead, they were left in an uncomfortable limbo, unsure of what was going on or why everything had been cancelled. As I took my seat, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of glee in the pit of my stomach. This was it. Jake and Emily had built their entire day around their carefully crafted image of the perfect wedding, and now, it was crumbling right before their eyes. The ceremony began, and the judge went through the usual formalities, but no one was truly paying attention. Emily kept glancing at me, her eyes silently begging for a sign that everything was going to turn out okay. Jake, on the other hand, was seething, his frustration palpable. I could practically hear him cursing the day he ever pushed me away, the weight of his regret hanging heavily in the air. Then, just as the vows were being exchanged, something unexpected happened. The door to the room opened with a creak, cutting through the tension like a knife. A familiar face stepped in, the catering manager from the venue where the original wedding was supposed to take place. For a brief moment there was complete silence. Everyone turned to look. Jake's face drained of color, his eyes wide in disbelief. Emily's mouth went dry, as if the air had been sucked out of the room. "What are you doing here?" Jake demanded, his voice cold like ice. The catering manager walked to the front, each step measured and deliberate, as if he were stepping into a lion's den. He handed Emily a large envelope, his expression unreadable. The whole room held its breath, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. "I think you'll want to see this," he said, his voice devoid of any emotion. The words hung in the air, sharp and ominous. Emily's hands shook as she tore open the envelope, her breath catching in her throat. I could almost hear the silence stretch as she pulled out the contents, her eyes scanning the paper with disbelief. The confusion on her face quickly turned to shock, and from there, it exploded into something darker: rage. The notice she held was a cancellation letter, an official document from the venue declaring their booking void. The contract had been terminated due to unpaid fees, and to make matters worse, a substantial fine had been added for the breach. The weight of it all seemed to crash down on her, her grip tightening on the paper as if holding it would somehow reverse the damage. The catering manager's voice broke through the tension, his words cutting through the air like a blade. "You're lucky I came here to let you know," he said, his tone laced with cold finality. "You should have paid attention to your obligations." At that moment, standing in front of a room full of people who had witnessed everything unravel, Emily finally broke. I thought we were going to get married today," she whispered, her voice breaking, the realization sinking in like a stone. Her eyes were wide, filled with disbelief, as if she couldn't comprehend how everything had fallen apart. Jake's face turned crimson, his anger igniting like wildfire. He stepped forward, fists clenched, his voice shaking with fury. "This is your fault. You were supposed to keep everything together." He advanced toward the catering manager, but the man didn't flinch. "You should have been more responsible," the manager replied, his voice unwavering, almost mocking. "But hey, I guess that's what happens when you treat people like they're disposable." I stood there, watching it all unfold with a sense of grim satisfaction creeping into my chest. The feeling was intoxicating. Jake and Emily had been so confident, so sure that they could manipulate the situation without consequences. They had treated everyone, including me, as if we were mere pawns in their game. And now here they were, cornered, their perfect day crashing down around them like dust in the wind. As the catering manager turned to leave, his presence still looming over the room, I caught Emily's eyes. For the first time I saw her vulnerability, and it tasted bittersweet. There was no one left to blame but themselves. No more excuses. No more manipulation. They had played their hand, and now they had to face the consequences. I watched them, savoring every moment, knowing that their wedding had become a public spectacle of their own making. But more than that, I felt a quiet sense of victory, because they had underestimated me, and in the end I had the power. I stepped outside, the cool air washing over me as I took in the sight of the clear sky. For the first time in a long while, I felt free, untethered from the weight of family obligations and manipulations. I couldn't help but smile to myself. It had been the perfect revenge, but it was more than just that. It was a statement, a moment of reclaiming my power. Jake and Emily would never forget the lesson they learned that day. As I walked away, I realized that true strength doesn't come from seeking revenge. It comes from standing up for yourself when others try to walk all over you, from refusing to be a doormat for the sake of family or anyone else. Sometimes the people you care about most will take you for granted, expecting you to always be there to pick up the pieces. But there comes a time when you have to stop cleaning up their messes and start taking control of your own life. The real lesson here was about self-respect. When you stop allowing others to treat you as if you are expendable, when you start demanding the respect you deserve, that's when true change happens. Family may be blood, but your peace of mind and dignity come first. And in the end, you are the one who decides how you're treated, not anyone else. That's the true power, and I had finally taken it back. What do you all think about my situation? In my case, I decided to cut ties with my family after years of being taken for granted. Jake and Emily pushed me aside, excluded me from their wedding planning, and treated me as if I were invisible, despite me funding the entire event. After everything that happened, I ended up canceling all the services for their wedding, leaving them with nothing but the harsh consequences of their own choices. Now, I can't help but feel a sense of satisfaction knowing they've had to face the fallout, but at the same time, I can't help but wonder if I went too far. Was it justified to withhold my help after they treated me like that, or did I cross a line? Am I wrong for not giving them another chance, especially when they came to me desperate, asking for help? I feel like this was a powerful moment in reclaiming my dignity, but I'm curious to know what others think. Was my reaction fair? Or should I have done something differently? Would love to hear thoughts from those who've been in a similar situation or just from the community in general. Today, what we saw was just a small part of the many stories shared on Reddit and across the world. It's a reminder of how we all try to understand life by sharing our experiences with each other. This video was only an example of how we try to connect with others through storytelling, learning about different sides of life. We hope to continue sharing such stories that help us all learn and grow together. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us keep creating the content you love. Join our community and stay tuned for more amazing stories coming your way. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Thanks for being part of our journey. If you haven't already, please like and follow for more amazing content. Your support keeps us going, and we will strive to bring you more thought-provoking and heartwarming stories. Until next time, take care and stay curious.